Hello, everybody. Namaskar. Good evening. This is my third video in the series of 150 poems, which, if you read, if you collect some matter, or at least you read them twice, those which are the longer ones, if you don't read them, at least go to Goodreads and jot down the important lines from these poems. I have full faith that you will get more than 10 questions in your exam related to this unit of poems or poetry. So in our last video, I talked about overall 51 poems in the last two videos, and the last one was Tintin Abbey, written by William Wordsworth. Now in this video, I'm coming to Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge, and S.T. Coleridge's contribution is immense. I have already uploaded a video on S.T. Coleridge. Kubla Khan is a very famous poem which he wrote in Dream, and this is, I think, an incomplete poem, and I think in every second net they ask us questions from this poem. Then, as you all know, that Christabel is again a poem, in which the writer, we all know that Christabel is a poem written by S.T. Coleridge, and Coleridge and Wordsworth, both of them came up with the publication of lyrical ballads, in which was considered to be the most important document which established romantic poetry. It is also considered to be the manifesto of romanticism, and Christabel is again an incomplete poem which talks about supernaturalism, and there are two or three characters in that poem. For example, uh, Geraldine is there, Christabel is there, and then Frost at Midnight is another poem by the same writer, and Dejection and Ode is a poem by S.T. Coleridge. These two poems are very important. Here he has given us the concept of unification of God, or the organic whole of human being, one who is an integral part of nature. Then Ancient Mariner, which is a longer poem, but I think one who aspires to become a professor should read at least this much longer poem, and audios are available, so you just keep reading the poem, and with the audio section you can, means that audio can help you to read poem in speed, so that you can cover the whole section. And then I come to the junior romantic, Lord Byron. Lord Byron is famous for writing "She Walks in Beauty." It's a small poem which is famous for its beauty of romanticism, in which the writer has talked about a widow and her beauty. She's wearing a black dress, so it is set on music also by different composers. So she walks in beauty. And then another important poem by Byron is Darkness. I have not included Don Juan and other longer poems by Byron. Uh, these poems are as such important, but you know that this video I'm making as a list of not very big poems, but 150 poems, which are compulsorily be studied by a student who aspires to become a professor. Then I come to Shelley. His contribution is immense, and he's famous for the sonnet England 1819, and his poems Cloud is famous. In that poem Cloud, he has talked about the scientific and the nature and science he has included in this poem with the beauty. And Adonis is an elegy written by Shelley on the death of John Keats. To Skylark is a very famous poem, in which I think many times they have asked us questions from the lines of this poem. Mont Blanc is a poem which is devoted to the concept of sublime in nature. Then Ode to West Wind is again that last line of this poem. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? So how the death of Shelley's The Sun affected him, and in that dejected mood, when he stopped writing poetry. So, and I can link this poem with Coleridge's poem Dejection and Ode. Both the poems are talking about that unproductive period of the writer. So, Ode to the West Wind is famous for its imagery, many like pestilence stricken multitude. These kind of phrases have already been asked in many exams. And one sonnet, Ozymandias, is again famous. Ozymandias is also taught in schools. It is I think in the course of NCRT also. And then I come to Keats. Keats is also famous for writing longer poems and sonnets also, but as you all know that in 1819 he wrote many odes, six odes at least, and all these odes are they have become very famous. So I'm not asking you to read all the sonnets, but if you read Ode to Nightingale, Ode to Grecian Urn, um, truth is beauty, beauty truth, that you need to know. You know that famous sentence from this poem. And Ode to Autumn, I have a particular video on in which I'm explaining Ode to Autumn. Actually, it was a live stream, so you can those who want to understand this poem can go to my other videos and can find it out. Then Ode to Indolence is also a very beautiful ode written by John Keats. As you all know, that the concept of Hellenism means the Greek touch in the poetry of John Keats. So a sonnet is very famous because John Keats is considered to be, he came in the context of Greek because he could not read institutionally. He was unable to read Greek language, so he took recourse to Chapman's Homer. Through translation, he came to know about the writings of Homer. So he wrote a sonnet on first looking into Chapman's Homer. That sonnet is very famous. Then Bright Star is again a very famous poem. One poem, La Belle Dame Sans Mercy, beautiful woman without mercy. It is a ballad, and it is again world famous. And Eve of Saint Agnes is written in Spenserian stanza, where the writer has created a kind of Romeo Juliet kind of story, in which there are two families, who have animosity between them, and then how the lover comes, and and the evening in which that heroine is nude, and she's about to take a dream of his future husband. So the name is quite medievalism is present in this poem, along with the beauty of the romantic writer John Keats. The beauty he has created with the phrases, with voluptuousness, with the sensuousness, which for which John Keats is famous. And then I come to Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson. He's famous for writing this poem Ulysses. Ulysses is, I think, a constant presence. This poem is a constant present in net exam. So you should read this poem at least two or three times. Then Lotus Eaters. It's a longer poem, but both the poems are contradictory in nature. So that's why I have placed them, or I have juxtaposed them, Ulysses and Lotus Eaters. And on 75 number, I have the Charge of the Light Brigade. In this video, I forgot to name the number of the poems, like on which number what poem is there. But if you see this video two or three times, and you jot down the names of the poems, then you will be able to understand. And just imagine that once you find that if you are obeying me and following me, and accordingly you read all these poems, and then you solve some previous year paper, and you will be surprised that you are able to find out many questions there. So in the same way, I'm going to make a video on the prose section also, in the section of essays also. Very soon I'm coming up with a video on all the major short stories in English literature. So Tennyson is famous for writing this Lotus Eaters, and one another very famous poem which is also taught in schools is the Charge of the Light Brigade. Uh, this is a very beautiful poem in which the writer has created a kind of marching music. Uh, then last poem written by this writer is Tennyson's "Crossing the Bar." In this poem, the writer is talking about the crossing the bar, the horizon. And another important poem based on the Greek mythology written by Tennyson is Tithonus. If you read this poem is in many universities taught there at in the Haryana universities. So some of my students who are from Haryana, they have already read it. Some students have Ulysses in their course. So, but all the poems are not in the syllabus. So, I think you will be benefited with this list, so that at least you can come to know. And I have made this list based on my experience, because I keep appearing in all the net exams. I have been appearing in this exam for last 20 years. I have cleared it 14 times, and my experience says that if you read these poems, you will really be benefited. Then there is a poem, Locksley Hall. Locksley Hall is again a very not tough poem, I can't say, but if you read the summary and you can read the important lines from Goodreads, at least I will consider that you have read the poem. Knowledge comes, but wisdom lingers. That famous line is from this poem, Locksley Hall. This poem is world famous. Then another important poem by the same writer is The Lady of Shalott. This Lady of Shalott also comes in the category of pre-Raphaelite poetry. So I have not touched upon this topic, like because the motto behind making these videos in series to make you aware about the major poems. But all these poems fall under certain categories. For example, metaphysical poetry, or say different theories are there behind these poems. So let me tell you about this Lady of Shalott. That this poem falls under the category of pre-Raphaelite poetry, in which the writer has created a visual imagery, sensuousness, and a precision of accuracy of when we read the poem, we feel that we are reading, we are looking at a painting. Then Godiva is another important poem. Godiva, if you can't read the whole poem, you should know, at least you can Google and study the history of Godiva. And a woman is asked to go nude on horse. So that is enough for you to create your curiosity to read this poem. And another very small poem which is very close to my heart, and that makes you clear the philosophy of Tennyson, that is Flower in the Crannied Wall. This poem I have kept on the 81 number. And now I come to Victorian poets. And Elizabeth Barrett Browning is a very famous poet. I have considered, what I consider, that sonnets from Portuguese. All these sonnets are important, but I think you should read. I have categorized it, or I have put it on 82 number. So, but I have asked you to read almost all the sonnet from Portuguese. Portuguese was her nickname. Lovingly, Browning used to call Elizabeth Barrett Browning Portuguese. So sonnet from Portuguese, you can remember, these are sonnets from Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Then Robert Browning's poem My Last Duchess. This is also a famous poem. This is based on the medieval aspect of Duchess, who belonged to a poor family, and then she was married to a duke, and how mercilessly he kills him because the Duchess is very innocent. Then The Last Ride Together. This is a sonnet, which is very, very famous. Not sonnet, I'm sorry, it's a long poem with, I think, more than 10 stanzas. And this talks about, the optimism of Robert Browning. Then Porphyra's Lover, the kind of psychological lover the writer has created, a kind of, a kind of lover who feels pleasure by giving pain to his beloved, and ultimately kills his beloved, Porphyra's Lover. So these are 85 poems now. In this video, I have covered poems from 52 number to 85 numbers, and we have come to Victorian age in this section of this small video, and it is almost 15 minutes. So I would love if you see this video at least 2 or 3 times, and if you don't read, if you don't write, at least you should be aware about the names of these poets and the names of these poems. Thank you very much.